Good morning. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I can see people are busy connecting. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this very important dialogue that we're going to have this morning, where we're talking about the situation in Mozambique very soon after the elections. We have an audience of attendees from Mozambique, from South Africa, from our other countries in the region, and we're very grateful to have everyone here. My name is Lily Manoyam. I'm from SALO, the Southern African Liaison Office, and we are hosting this meeting in conjunction with our partners, the Norwegian People's Agents Aid, and we're very grateful to them for providing this opportunity to have such an important dialogue. So I would like to introduce a colleague of mine, Tendai Mbanje, who is a SALO associate, and he's going to be chairing the meeting. And also to let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded, it's being live streamed, and it's a public meeting. And also to let everybody know who's in attendance that we're going to have some input from the speakers, from the panelists. They will be sharing some insights. And after the speakers, we're then going to be opening up the discussion, and everyone in attendance is also welcome to then join in and contribute to the conversation. So please keep your questions and thoughts until that time where we would invite you to come in and ask. And that's all from myself. So thank you very much. And over to you, Tendai.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone, and welcome to this important dialogue. This public dialogue is being hosted by SALO after over a month after the October 9 elections in Mozambique, that he has brought international attention. The elections that are highly contested, elections that has prompted SADC to have an extraordinary meeting today on the outcome of the election. It is an election that is also, to some extent, brought fears to many people within the SADC region to the future of Mozambique. So today we are going to unpack to try to understand what's really going on the ground in Mozambique with our esteemed panelists who are based in Mozambique, 3 of them, and one is based in South Africa. But before I invite them, I'd like to give a little bit of context for what has been going on in Mozambique from an academic and electoral expert point of view. Prior to the October 9 elections in Mozambique, we realized that there were fears that the environment was not suitable for elections to be held. There were many indicators, for example, from the preparedness of the Electoral Commission itself, CENI. There were concerns around issues of electoral reforms that were seen to have been a challenge, and they were not sufficient enough to hold a credible election. There were fears of that the Independent Electoral Commission had done poorly in preparations towards the elections. And these fears and these concerns were addressed. And also we realized that the previous local government elections in Mozambique was disputed. And in my view, we call this, the process was disputed and was not resolved properly, which is called in, which I call an electoral process which is not complete, inconclusive electoral cycle. So Mozambique found itself getting into another election with previous issues with previous unresolved issues from the previous local government elections, and also other elections. There's so many issues. So we see Mozambique is on the edge. Frelimo is battling to extend its 49-year rule and is being highly challenged by the opposition parties that have noted irregularities, and also some of these irregularities were noted by election observer missions of the EU, International Republican Institute, among others, whereas the African Union and the SADC had taken a softer approach to their findings in Mozambique. So these allegations of fraud has sparked a wide unrest throughout the country, many in cities. And as a result, we've seen government crack down on unarmed civilians. And the government's Minister of Interior calling protesters terrorists. And this has been the situation. We have seen loss of life with the human rights groups recording over 30 and hundreds injured, severely injured, fired by live ammunition. We've also seen the disproportionate response from the police and the military towards these protesters. And the protest goes on. The protests continue in Mozambique. Mainly, we see how technology, social media has been used to keep mobilizing protests by the opposition leaders. And then we have seen that the Constitutional Council has received a formal complaint from opposition leaders from the opposition parties, and they are yet to make a pronouncement on that. We have seen borders being shut down, impacting trade. We have seen internet shutdowns and social media shutdowns also, which is a violation of rights in the process. So this is the situation that we found ourselves, and this is the situation that we find in Mozambique. And as a result, this issue has prompted international concern and SADC concern. So today we are gathered to unpack what does this mean, what's actually going on the ground that is not being recorded on the media. And we have seasoned experts, particularly those who are residing in Mozambique. So our first presenter, who's going to share with us for approximately 8 minutes, is Sheila Nakare. She's a human rights activist and a journalist. And also, I know Sheila is a human rights defender. And she also gives us insights on what's going on in Mozambique from a viewpoint of a journalist who has collected information on what's going on the ground, from a viewpoint of a human rights defender, what rights are at stake as these protests are going on and as the government is cracking down on citizens. And also, from an activist point of view, what needs to be done. So in brief, Sheila, I would like to welcome you to give us some insights so that our audience and the entire Africa and who are engaged on and who follow the work of SALO closely could be informed around the developments in Mozambique. So Sheila, welcome, and over to you for your insights.
Thank you, Tendai. Well, yes, my name is Sheila. I am from Mozambique, and I work for an online newspaper called the Mozambique Times, which is a newspaper that essentially publishes relevant information about Mozambique, with impact not only in Mozambique, but also at international level. We write about many issues, including politics and, of course, elections. And from what we are sharing or reporting so far, we can see that we are going through the worst post-elections in Mozambique, where it's being clear that Mozambique or the state of Mozambique, it's having behaviors of dictators, where people cannot freely exercise their rights, their freedoms. I'm telling that because, as you well mentioned, people are being killed. Of our records, more than 50 people were killed by the police so far. And they are only being killed because they are trying to exercise their freedom of assembly and of demonstration. Um, so we have a state which is not accepting people to exercise their rights, their freedoms. They kill the people because they assume that people don't have positions that somehow don't benefit the state and this actual government, which is essentially composed by Frelimo party members. Most of that, we have branches, the judicial branch, the executive branch, the parliament. They are working to benefit the ruling party. We have the Constitutional Court, which has received that recourse from the opposition part, which is clear that the results announced by CNA have enough discrepancies which cannot allow the Constitutional Court to validate that results. But so far, they did not say anything about their decision on that recourse. And what we know based on our experience with the previous elections is that it's more predictable that this constitutional court, they decide in favor of the ruling party, because also the judicial party in Mozambique, they work in favor of the ruling party. I saw a news today that was mentioning that, saying the president of the Constitutional Court is saying internally that they must continue giving that that victory to Frelimo candidate, which is called Daniel Chapo. But what they can do is to give some seats for the opposition parties. So we see executive branch, we see judicial branch and the parliament working in favor of Frelimo. We see a state where if you want to try to exercise your right to freedom of expression or freedom of the assembly, if you want to demonstrate, and if your sentiment, if your position is against the ruling party, you are killed, because they use all of this to maintain their power. They don't care if people are dying, if people are saying the truth, because it's clear that these elections were fraudulent. People, even the electoral commission, they did publish results that the president assumed that were not correct, but he had to announce the way he announced it, giving the victory to Frelimo and to its presidential candidate. So it's clear that in this point, Mozambique fits all the requirements of a dictator state, and it is getting worse because the bodies that are in front of these institutions responsible of managing elections and managing justice in Mozambique, they seem not to be humble so far. They don't assume that we are in crisis, and they need to do something to change the situation in Mozambique now. Because what is making it worse is that the people see that we live in a country where human rights are not respected. We, in the constitution, we are democratic, but in the real situation, we are not democratic, and the leaders are not assuming that. They are not being humble to come and talk to people, have dialogues, and ask and resolve the things, to make the things clear for everyone, that if they think they won, they don't, they cannot talk to people and see what people want. They are not having this capability. So what we watch is that the ruling party is doing what they think is the best, not having dialogues, continuing using the police to kill people when they go out to demonstrate, and the constitutional court trying to protect the ruling party and give some seats in the parliament to the opposition leaders and parties. So if it continues like that, the situation in Mozambique can get worse. And the fact that now it's not only opposition members that are going to demonstrate, but all the Mozambican people, young people mainly, that are not happy with the situation, because we have many problems, economics problems in Mozambique, where young people, they don't have opportunities to have better conditions of life. So it's not a problem of a specific opposition party, but young people have owned this struggle to try to change the situation, the human rights situation in Mozambique, so that maybe they can have a better life and improve the situation, which is being very bad for young people, for people that are not from Frelimo party. So this is almost what is happening in Mozambique. We have a dictator state. We have young people now that decided not to accept human rights being violated. Even if people are dying, we see young people going out and not stopping the demonstrations. So if it gets like that, things will get worse in Mozambique. So I see Tendai giving me a sign, maybe it's my time out, and I'll give it over to him.
Thank you, Sheila. I think your presentation is quite insightful. I think it has become clear to us, and that the elections in Mozambique are not unique to the elections that has happened in terms of the underlying issues, the economic issues, bread and butter issues, particularly for young people. That is why in your submission, you mentioned that it's about Mozambicans who are coming out. They are not happy about the situation, and they do not see that the future that they want can be guaranteed given the outcome of this election. And it's very sad to learn that more than 50 people have been killed. And while mainstream media underreports such fatalities, and these are people who are being killed by the innocent protesters who are being killed by the police. It's quite sad to learn that, merely for exercising their basic rights. And these are unarmed youths, unarmed young people. And this also validates the claims that we have read from various rights groups that Frelimo seems to have a hand control of the police force, which is said. It's also said to learn of the weaponization of state institutions that are working against the citizens. And by now, the whole SADC region and Africa is waiting on the pronouncement of the Constitutional Council, which maps the future. And from your submission, the lack of anticipation of change, it's very sad to learn. And then that then gives us the question, what does the future look like? If there are speculations that the Constitutional Council is likely to pronounce and overlook the irregularities, gross misconduct, fraudulence that has been recorded by some observers and citizens, as well as political parties in Mozambique. And given this, I would like to hear a voice from the church. I would like to hear a perspective from the church on the take of the unrest. I would like to welcome Bishop Manuel Ernesto from Nampula Province, Diocese, to give us a perspective from the church. What does the church think and feel given the unrest? What is the church doing? Is there an intervention so far around the issue? Engagement of leaders and the church is a very influential role, not only in Mozambique, but across the region and Africa and the world, in ensuring a voice of reason and ensuring that this pronounce issues that pertains to the rights of the citizens they minister to. So Bishop Ernesto, welcome, and give us a perspective from the work that you do and from your observations. You are muted. Please unmute. Okay, thank you. The internet, we can't hear you. Maybe it seems that we are struggling to hear you at all. Maybe while we wait for your internet to stabilize, do you mind to mute? And then I welcome Ngadife, who is a project manager and an activist in Mozambique, to give us, she's also a youth human rights defender, who's also active and promoting the rights of people in Mozambique, to give us some remarks. Bishop, I'll come back to you when your internet stabilizes. Ngadife, would you come in and give us some insights from the work that you do as human rights defender and activist, and also from your observation as a citizen and a young person? What is the situation like? What do you think should be done? And what are the young people feeling? Over to you, Ngadife.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Tendai, thank you for your invitation and to join all of us here to talk about this kind of crisis in Mozambique around the post-elections. It's important to say that the post-election in Mozambique this year raised important question about political legitimacy and respect for human rights and the effectiveness of democratic institution. This phenomenon is not very good for us as human rights defenders, as citizens, even as a young or youth in general. This part has a part crisis or dispute, but during the time we saw and we understood that it's more than that. That's why people started to demonstrate peacefully. We should emphasize that, because we start and we try to make peacefully demonstration. But unfortunately, as my colleague Sheila said, they were banned, they were forbidden and repressed, brutally repressed by the police in the all force of Mozambique. We have WIR, we have SIS, intelligent force here, technology, we saw helicopter here. We saw a lot of strategic to block the peacefully demonstration, even killing people brutally. We saw our brothers, our sisters going down because of all of this. Now we are talking around or more than 50 people dead and more than 100 injured. That is a very deeply concerned issue. It's also important to share that we know that the democratic election are the main tool for citizens to exercise their rights and to show our legitimacy and sovereignty. But in Mozambique, election is no more about the citizen. It's more about Frelimo and parties. They instrumentalize the election. That's why when the result is not in the way they are thought, they change things. Even the electoral laws, they change to benefit themselves. And that is a horrible thing. When we are in the start of rule, it's important to consider the decision of the citizen. For instance, the Constitutional Council itself confirmed that in which the number of votes exceeded the total number of registered voters in center located. This scenario combined with the exclusion of citizens, because some of citizens, they didn't exercise their right of vote, because when they want to do that, they discovered that someone did it on their behalf. In other scenario, we saw that their names, they weren't in the books, electoral books. So these elements, these scenarios from the voting process continue and explicit violation of the right to political participation. And is the reason most of people are nowadays or currently unhappy with the situation, because they are not seeing their votes, their decision in the end of the day, their votes means nothing. The situation of the economy is bad. The protection is horrible. People can, after 8 p.m., people start to fear to walk through the street because of insecurity. But we have the police there, and they don't do anything to protect us as a citizen of this country. And we know that those rights are crucial for sustained political and to sustain the democracy. From the point of view of legitimacy, it's essential to remember that the state power must legitimize by the people, expressing their transparent and fair electoral process. When we saw and we heard about the fraud, allegation of fraud, we start question this legitimacy of the state. And we answer ourselves, is this important still having state? We share our power of decision of ourselves and share it on the stage. Today, do the best decision for us. But when we don't see that, we think it's better to regret and start to think that it is more comfortable to protect ourselves because the police doesn't do that. On the other hand, the role of the state is the guarantee of the fundamental right, but they are not succeed to do that. CDD wrote about let me find here the number of the people injured.
We have 1 minute, Gandife.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I just want to show you how concerned is this situation in Mozambique. They said the number of injury is more than 1,000. 1,000. And the police still killing people, still kidnapping activists, journalists. I think you saw in social media that South African journalists, journalists disappeared, and they are not saying anything about that. They are not humble enough to say that, yeah, we are wrong. It's supposed to dialogue and find the solution to take all of the situation and gives the votes, the real votes, to who won.
Thank you, Gandif. Sorry to cut you short. I think you've given us a foundation of understanding also from a different perspective as a human rights defender of the impact of repression in Mozambique, silencing of the voices, by killing of citizens, and also silencing of the voices, kidnaps. The issue of 2 South African journalists also raised alarm. You know, journalists should be given an opportunity to play any instrumental role in dissemination of information, impacting the right information to citizens of the world. And yes, there is a broken social contract among the citizens and the government. There is a lack of disagreement on how the electoral process went. And that broken social contract is leading to questions that you're raising about legitimacy of the state and the centrality of the state in violating the rights of its citizens in this particular context, using state apparatus such as the police. Thank you so much for that. And these are very exciting developments. Thanks to social media and other platforms, these are the insights that we do not get on mainstream media. It's actually shocking to learn that more than 1,000 people have been injured. Of course, not shocking, but knowing the extent to which the protests are going, one would expect that. But it's shocking in the sense that it's not recorded and it's not being reported in mainstream media, simply because of obvious reasons that have been that we learn, like governance indicators have rated media freedoms in Mozambique are very low. So now I would like to come back to the Bishop. Thank you, Nkandife. I'll come back to you shortly. The Bishop, please come back to give us some insights from the voices of the church, from your perspective, from the work that you do, from your ministry. How's the feeling? What are the findings? What are the people saying? Please come through. Bishop, are you there?
He's just busy reconnecting. Give it one second.
Okay. Seems that his internet has been giving him trouble today. Fredson from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. Are you, Fredson Wilengu? Are you ready to give us some insights, given your work and your experience in Mozambique, and what insights could be drawn, potential interventions could be given to this dire situation? And it's also given the late SADC Extraordinary Summit. It's coming at a very late stage. We should not have allowed people to die, people to be injured, to be abused by the state apparatus before we make interventions, which is a sad story. Give us some insights, Fredson.
Hello, Tendai. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Tendai, it's a very interesting question that you're asking me, but I've not necessarily prepared my talk in that direction now, but I'm more than welcome. I mean, you are more than welcome to come back to those questions later on. And what I'll try to do is just give some ideas to as a way of trying to locate what's happening in Mozambique in a much bigger context. Because for me, what's happening in Mozambique is not new, and the Mozambicans know that. And some of them in the previous speakers made some references about the lack of trust in the institutions and so on, so on. So they result from important processes that I think we should try to address before we look at what's happening today as something completely disconnected from other realities that the country has been experiencing. So I think my first attempt would be that, and my take, if I'd say, would to say like that, we are experiencing the consequence of colonialism as well, to some extent, because as we all know, Frelimo inherited a centralized and authoritarian colonial state apparatus. Colonialism is authoritarian because if you have to dominate, you have to repress, you have to divide the society. I mean, and violence is had a very significant role in that process. So it was also a centralized state because, I mean, the control and the benefit of the states was within a small white minority. So there is violence there to implement the agenda. There is also centralism to benefit and to manage, but there is also authoritarianism as part of the entire colonial project. So then we have the second process, which is the process of decolonization, which I also believe that it was again a centralized, Frelimo implemented a centralized state and also an authoritarian and not a democratic state. Why? Because Frelimo instituted a single party state immediately after the independence, and all the decisions that were made about the future of Mozambique, these decisions were made by a small minority within the party structure, which is the political bureau or the central committee, etc. So these are the people who had the project of decolonizing and implemented, had also the means to implement, including the monopoly of violence that was deployed to implement this decolonization project. So it was again the decolonization process, the process to decolonize Mozambique implemented by Frelimo after independence was again authoritarian and centralized. It relied on the concentration camps, rehabilitation camps. It relied on control of movements of people, etc., etc. So then again, it had to be violent because the society is heterogeneous. A single party state can only be implemented through repression. And it's also very important not to ignore the fact that Frelimo, the party, was Frelimo a guerrilla movement that, as you know from history, and historians prove that guerrilla movements tend to bring into the state those characteristics that are specific of the times of the guerrilla war, of the guerrilla movement nature, like, for example, corruption, highly centralized structures following with command by a few people, secrecy, and also oppression, including killings of those perceived to be against the project. So these were brought into Mozambican society, into the post-independence Mozambican state by Frelimo, and we can still see them today. This is what explains, to my understanding, some of the killings of specific individuals that voice against Frelimo's agenda and Frelimo's way of running the state. So then there is the third, which is the current process, which is the process of fossil fuel neoliberal capitalism, so which is also being implemented through again centralism. It's, I mean, there is the benefits from the extractive industry continues to be confined to that small bourgeoisie elite that was created post 90s with the help of the IMF and the World Bank. To turn Mozambique into a neoliberal state. So these people still centralize the benefits, but also run the extractivist economy with obviously the alliance with imperial forces like the France, as we see Total, sub-imperial forces like we see in Brazil in the case of coal in Tete, and South Africa as well, SALO, and also getting the protection of these sub-imperial forces in the conflict of Cabo Delgado, all to try to preserve their control over the resources. So the Mozambican civil society has been voicing, lots of have been putting forward findings about how much the elite controls mining concessions and so on, so on, so on. But that also comes with violence because communities have to be removed from their own areas where they live. So there's this process of resource grabbing is done through violence. But there's also one question that I think it's relevant to ask. So I try to address why violence from the state's perspective. It's because of the authoritarian nature of the state, but it's also because of having Frelimo having brought into the state, as I said, those characteristics that that it used to have as a guerrilla movement. But why is there violence from the people as well? So there is also violence from the people because unfortunately over the years, violence in Mozambique has crystallized as the only way to communicate with the state because no other ways have been put in practice by Frelimo to allow citizens to communicate without having to be violence, because the response of the state has always been violence. So to some extent, people are left with no other alternative to communicate their grievances without having to deploy violence. Sorry, here I'm not trying to be apologetic of violence, but I'm just describing the context. So just to finish, there is now the question of why now? Like I tried to say, this process of contestation did not begin now. Political contestation against Frelimo has been a continuum in the context in Mozambique. The only difference now is with the weakening of Renamo gave it more agency to other actors to try more space to try to contest in urban areas. So the epicenter of contestation, which used to be mostly in the rural areas, is now moving into the urban areas. This is my very brief reading. But this particular moment, why now as we see it in terms of timing? Because in the past 4 to 5 years, poverty has increased substantially in Mozambique, also due to COVID. There's also issues related to inequality. There was a court case, the famous court case known as the hidden debt that exposed how corrupt the ruling elite is and how the public funds are being used just to fund the appetite of the ruling elite. So this was another important element. But there's a second element, which is the nature of the youth, the youth that we see today, the access of information, that is not controlled by the state, does not pass through the public media. So the youth that we see today, they generate information and they can quickly share information that does not pass through the control of the elite. Thank you.
Fredson, I'd like to sincerely thank you for such powerful submission. I think what you're saying actually is some of the crucial and critical aspects that are being raised by lots of researchers, human rights practitioners, and development practitioners. That elections have always been contested in many parts of Africa, simply because over the decades, when colonial states got independence, we jumped into democratization without actually looking deep into the nature of the state. And now the question is coming back to say, let's refocus on the state, because that gap, we moved to the idea of rights without making solid foundation on strengthening the state, the nature of the state in an African context. And we have seen that there hasn't been much in terms of decolonization that has happened if the state still employ colonial tools such as violence as an apparatus to run the state. That lack of evolution, and this you can imagine from 1975 to date, which is 49 years, and then you look at beyond the civil war in the 1991, you see that there hasn't been much development in terms of moving away from the culture of violence, which brings about issues of nation building, gender that needs to be strongly considered beyond the circumstances that we find in Mozambique at the moment. We see that what is happening in Mozambique, the departure from the liberation agenda into which liberation values and into turning into a monster that is violent and persecuting its own citizens. It's very also common in liberation movements that are facing existential or that are dying, slowly dying. Thanks to the youth, thanks to technology, thanks to social media, for unfiltered information, for information that is not controlled. Gone are the days of propaganda, and this is the beauty. This is also why we found ourselves in this dialogue, where we have unfiltered information. We have information coming, raw data coming from citizens, that is not monopolized, so that the world in Africa can actually know what's going on in Mozambique. So Bishop, I think maybe, thank you so much, Fredson. Bishop, I think maybe let's try you again. I think the internet could be stable. Come in for 7 minutes. A little bit. You can speak.
Now, thank you very much once again for this discussion for our country and for the region. I think before elections, we had yet another discussion where we were trying to assess the environment during the election, and also try to project our vision for the post-election. I think we, at the moment, my colleagues are Sheila and the others have already said much about the context of Mozambique now. But from the community point of view and from the perspective of the church, what we see now is we are degenerating now in a situation where it's not just the violence in the streets, but we came at a point where in some areas, the residential areas, neighbors are turning against other neighbors. And this is really sad and dangerous. If people start now moving from the situations we are in to a conflict of identities, who is who, this is really difficult. From the perspective of the church, I think apart from prayers and talking to our ecumenical and interfaith colleagues, I think we call ourselves for repentance, if I can use a theological term. Repentance, not just in terms of sentiment, in terms of words, but a commitment to say we cannot really repeat the memories of the past. And that's why some of our leaders have tried to contribute to the political exercise in Mozambique. Some of them have offered themselves to chair some of the institutions, including the electoral commission. But we know that it is a systemic issues that we are facing in Mozambique. My colleagues, especially the last speaker, has elaborated in terms of, and very well in terms of where we come from and where we are heading. I see it as a collective trauma. We come from a violent past, and that we needed to heal, and the church was is still committed on that, but we are always being caught in the middle of new conflicts. Cabo Delgado, now elections, but we see the collective trauma. Reading the scenarios and hearing my colleagues, what we are facing now is not just a matter of structure, what we say policies, processes. Now, we need, yes, the structural change, but we need to go deeper. We have seen that there is an effort for also change in terms of the connections and the relationships. We see now emerging new power dynamics, new actors emerging. But I think it's not enough. We need to go deeper. And this is not just today or tomorrow, but it is a big agenda. What we need to go to a transformative change, where we need to assess, but also examine ideology, theology in the church, our beliefs. What Mozambique do we want? Especially, we need to hear to young people. I think many of them, they hear us here in the platform, but they will share what we are saying. We need to come a point where we say, young people, we hear you. Young people, we need to integrate you, but also create spaces for intergenerational dialogue. And the church, we have that vocation to convene that kind of dialogues, and we are able to do that. And we are already doing at the community level, but we wanted to see it regional and national level, people talking to young people, not just telling them what we are deciding or what are the policies, but allowing them to tell their story. And that is why we see them in the street. We see them what many of us we call violent actors, but it is a way of saying, please hear us. So these are the scenarios that we have, but we need to focus our efforts on the current situation we have here in Mozambique, which is election. We were all excited saying the election could be a moment of where we could come together, but also unite the country, and but also try to say, can we come together and not create more conflicts, and just to see how we fix the Cabo Delgado, how we come with economic issues, but we see now that that is not the case. So what happened in reality? I see movements and Constitutional Council, which we are waiting for the results. I see policymakers in Maputo, but from a grassroots perspective, what we have seen here is an endemic situation within the election in Mozambique. And then we have said it in many forums. Where is the bottleneck? Where is the problem in this electoral system in Mozambique? We know that different levels are doing different things and a lot of contestation, but we have from our as we stand here at community level, we have focused on grassroots level. What happened? And I invite many just to join us in that perspective of thinking. What happened is the voting process was participative, and many people came to vote. Although many were not able to do so because of the confusion at the end of the day. But in any election in Mozambique, problem starts on counting. When the ballot boxes are closed, now the counting process comes. Now is the really a critical moment. And then we have seen that. So from counting to the signing of the election certificate that are sent to the district offices. Everyone here, the grassroots level, is saying this is the critical moment where everything happened. So we have seen here ballot boxes abandoned at the polling station, and you see, and what people took was just the election certificate to the district office. From district office, province, and then the province, and then we go to the nation. These are the certificates that we see that are being contested. But can we think together and they say how the certificates were elaborated? They're saying they were consensus. But we see here that, and the SADC principles are saying we need to prevent, we need to make sure that we prevent, this is the SADC guidelines 414, say, take all the necessary measures and the precaution to prevent corruption, bribery, favoritism, political violence, intolerance, and intimidation. And from our standing at the grassroots, we see everything written here happened after counting. So I don't know what the institution can do now, but I think there was a extreme lack of decisive leadership at that point. So what we can do now, I think at the church we are appealing to say, can we stop violence? But also we are engaging young people saying, can we allow the authority to correct, but also to take decisions? And we are waiting for the Constitution Council. But also we are praying and expecting from our leaders ahead of the SADC meeting today to say, can SADC help Mozambique to get out of this situation? What is the formula that can be adopted at this moment, where we have no clear evidence in terms of can electoral actors prove to say, this is the certificate, these are the evidence, this is what we can, I hear people saying recounting the voting or doing other things. Do we have evidence? Do we have the voting bulletins stored somewhere? Can we prove that the election certificate from the district is a genuine document? Who will do that? And these are the questions that we needed to raise. But we need to have a decision. What is the way forward? I think it is a matter of a political will from all political actors, but also special for the ruling party to say, can we allow the country, can we allow the institutions to do something to help Mozambique? We are not the only one to come to this point. Malawi was in that situation, they corrected. South Africa, they were the blink of this situation, they corrected themselves, they agreed to work together. So we need someone, I think institution or a personality or our president or so, but we need a decisive leadership that will say, let us stop the violence, let us work for truth in terms of the election, but also the way forward. We don't know what's going to happen, but we are praying. We are saying the church is ready to support. We are repenting for any contribution that we have done for this situation, and we are open to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. It's very inspiring to hear your insights as a minister of the gospel from this a church perspective to this. There's been a sense of degeneration. The situation since 1975, the use of violence that you have emphasized. And right now, the most critical thing is about conflicting political identities, where if you are perhaps mistaken to belong to a certain political movement, you could be victimized in the space. The collective trauma that the nation is going through, perpetual violence after violence, and we have seen that this has become really a disease that needs to be rooted. And most recently, we're talking about Cabo de Gauto. Now we're talking about this. And all of this may actually exacerbate and turn out into something very dangerous. Hence, there's need for that intergenerational dialogue for the government to open up space for citizens to speak to each other for nation building. Otherwise, there is no future for Mozambique if citizens don't speak to each other. At this stage, I would like to open the floor to insights from the floor, from most of our attendees, to just give your insights in brief reactions to this. I'll start with Ahmed. Ahmed, please unmute yourself and give your quick remarks. Ahmed,
Yes.
Please come through.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you may switch on your video if you'd like.
Okay. I am Mr. Ahmed. Ahmed Malide. I am Mr. Ahmed, President of the House of Civil Society Organizations in Anjouan Island in Comoros. I'm not speak English, but I try to speak. If no good, I'm sorry. Yeah? I'm speak French quickly, but now I'm speak English.
No, your English is good. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Today we are discussing the post-election situation, and when I hear that is happening in Mozambique, I think that the phenomenon is very widespread, in the region. When we look at what happened last January with the presidential elections in the Comoros, or when we see that happened in Kenya with the contested election won by the government in Pua, we wonder what SADC is she there to defend the interest of the authorities, or is she there to defend democracy and the voice of the people? That is my question. I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Amit. I would assume that some of our respondents will be able to touch on the question that you have raised. Then, of course, I will comment on it at a later stage. And there's a comment in the chat box to say that was commenting on the bishop's submission from Dennis. We tell us saying that the churches in Mozambique need to do more. They have to come up in one voice and speak up against injustice and stand for the truth. We've seen also the statement from the Catholic bishops commenting on the situation. I think it's critical that the church in the collective voice, and even in Southern Africa, should pronounce and speak strongly against the violence and violations of rights that is occurring in Mozambique on a daily basis, and especially given the fact that it's being used by the state against its citizens. Sheila, you'd like to react briefly before we give someone a floor? Sheila, your hand is up. Please react. Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. I just wanted to comment about the violence that was mentioned during the presentations. It was mentioned that the population in Mozambique is also using violence to be seen or to be heard by the government and the institutions. We, as election observers and journalists, we see, we could see that from the beginning of these demonstrations, essentially it was peaceful. People went out, they tried to demonstrate, and at some point we could see the police starting tear gas, shooting real
Live ammunition.
yes, for the people. We're only trying to, like, sometimes people, without starting the demonstrations, we could see that the police starting shooting tear gas. We could see even the police shooting or tear gas to the opposition leader when he was during a press conference. There were many journalists there during this press conference. We had this opposition candidate, which by the official results is the second more voted candidate. They cooled tear gas to that press conference. They had to run away because they didn't want that movement of people getting together and demonstrate, or having the candidate speaking about what he thinks about the election results. So we have a situation where the police started attacking the demonstrators, and the police, when they are out of these clothes, they live together with the people in the hoods. So we watched situations where members of the police shooting against child during demonstrations, and people started getting angry and go to that agent members. They go to the police station, has a way to protect themselves from that shoots or from that attacks. So what I think is that the bases need to be fixed. And what we watched is that more than 60% of the people did not vote, and the people that voted saw the votes rabbit. We watched irregularities that are clear, like national observers, they could report that, international observers, they could report that, and people cannot demonstrate. And the argument of the government now is that what is the meaning is that the people are being violent. People are not being violent. People are only trying to protect themselves. Of course, sometimes we have infiltrated people, but it's a few number that goes out and create disorder in the street. But like in general, we don't watch demonstrators being violent. It's it's not like that, and we need to stop spreading this information that demonstrators are being violent, because they are not being violent. They are being killed, they are being arrested, they are not being heard by who needs to hear the voices of young people that are not linked to that argument that Frelimo needs to maintain in power only because they could give the independence for the country. This argument has expired. We need new things because we are in new times. Young people need to live in better conditions. This is what is happening. So I don't agree when we spread this information that people are not being pacific, because in general the demonstrators are being pacific in what they are doing, and they are being killed. We see we know the people that kill the people, and nothing is happening. Impunity is there. The government is not hearing what people are saying. We saw the president yesterday, and the main argument of him is that we need to stop being violent. We need to stop doing all of these things, but this is not what is happening. They need to stop this argument. Yeah.
Thank you, Sheila. I think that clarity is important. Obviously, the previous speaker, we had spoke about that. It is at a philosophical level where that discussion arose to say, unless there is some form of activity that is uncomfortable to the government, they will not listen. So I understood it from that philosophical level, but I do concur with you for such clarity as well, for those who may take that conversation or that understanding in a slightly different way. And Ruben asked that I would like to understand, given the current state of situation and considering the role of religion in country's peace building process, what's the role of religion's involvement in this process, and whether there is a space for such intervention. I think the bishop already gave some insights that the church plays a critical role in that, and there have been efforts from the church And obviously, the church cannot do much without being supported also by the state and other partners, like-minded partners. So it's always that tug of war where if efforts are not complemented, there's always that challenge. And I would like to hear from you guys. I know, Fredson, you're raising your hand. Is there anyone who want to come in? Just briefly before I come to the I'll come back to the speakers. I'd like to hear from the floor. What are your thoughts?
And maybe you could read out the questions and comment in the chat.
Okay. And there is also another question from Abel. Considering Zimbabwe's focus on trade market integration during SADC chairmanship, how can the regional board facilitate economic cooperation trade in Mozambique's post-election unrest, particularly with the disruption of Libombo border, which plays a significant role in cross-border trade? That's another question that is coming in about disruption of trade and Zimbabwe's role as a chair of SADC. And the extraordinary summit is happening today. There's a question: what do we expect from Zimbabwe's chairmanship? Do you expect Zimbabwe's leadership in this particular scenario, given Zimbabwe's strong ties with Frelimo? There is discomfort among Southern African citizens around that, and whether this extraordinary summit will bear any fruit for the people of Mozambique. Let me hear your reactions on this. Generally, if I don't see a hand, I will always ask a person that is close to give some insight. David Moore, you would like to give an insight? David, are you willing to share a brief insight based on this conversation? David is unavailable. Maybe Safora, would you like to give an insight? I always enjoy your comments and your remarks. Donald, from the media perspective, do you have any insight from this particular conversation that you may want to share? Yes, Donald, you can go ahead. I saw you unmuted yourself. I can't hear you. David is asking, can I ask some comparison between Botswana elections and Mozambique's any? I think I was very much involved in Botswana elections and Mozambique elections, pre-election assessment processes. Both there were fears of elections that were not going to be credible. Particularly, for example, in the context of Botswana. Botswana went into elections without proper election reforms, lack of state funding for political parties, incomplete constitutional review process. There were issues around media freedoms, monopolization of the state media, bias towards the ruling party, BDP, by then. There were issues around advantage of the incumbent, given lack of state funding for political parties and so forth. But what we got to then learn that although the environment was not entirely suitable for a free and for a credible election, given these concerns that was being raised by civil society. Civil society was dead but we had an outcome that shocked even us who anticipated that the ruling party was going to retain power. So we see that the similar context where Mozambique also went to an election with a plethora of unresolved electoral issues. But we see that unlike Botswana, the government did not compromise the IEC, which was responsible for administration of elections. Whereas in the context of Mozambique, we see that there were issues, but also we see that there is that perception of politicization of CENI, which then gives the results that are not reflecting what is on the voters' roll, number of the people that have voted. Donald, would you like to come again? I see you're muted now. Yes, please come through. I cannot hear you. Try to turn high your volume, perhaps. Otherwise, it could be the network. I think we're facing the same challenge. Yes, we're facing the same challenge. And let me go back to one of our speakers. We had raised his hand. Fredson, please come through and perhaps give some reaction to what Sheila's submission. Fredson, come through. You are muted.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, thank you. And also thank you very much for trying to make my argument a little bit more clear. When I was talking about violence, I spoke about the historical role of violence in the Mozambican context from the colonial period until now. And I think I need to clarify that at no given time I was aiming at just clarifying the group of people, the Mozambicans who are on the streets now, as a bunch of violent people, or as being the ones who are driving violence against the state. No. But again, this is not what I meant. But again, it's very important to look at the role of violence, the historical role of violence in any given society, especially in our society as well. It's important not to ignore that even the most legitimate process can be accompanied by some sort of violence. The struggle against colonialism was accompanied by the armed struggle in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe as well, in South Africa. The struggle against apartheid was also accompanied by violence, people banging tires on the streets and so on, blocking passages and all sorts of other forms of violence. Not the same as the level of violence deployed by the system. So I'm not saying that, and I really hope that that's very clear, because also there is a violence from the oppressor, and also which must be distinguished from violence from the oppressed, if I can say it like that. And I know I'm throwing myself again into the lion's cage there. But I also wanted to touch very lightly also on SADC. And also maybe again on the domestic institutions in Mozambique that were supposed to be the bridge between the people and the regime. But first on SADC, SADC, the perception that the people have of SADC, which is not simply, confined to Mozambique, is that SADC is a weak organization, weak financially. We saw that when SADC came to help Mozambique now in the conflict in the northern Mozambique, the recurring challenges with financial resources to keep its operations. But we also saw SADC as a weak organization politically as well, showing a little bit of lots of partiality I mean, or bias, if I have to call it like that. You remember what happened in Zimbabwe in the early 2000s, and the SADC's intervention there left a legacy of SADC being an organization that's very partial, especially when it comes to former liberators who are also the founding members of SADCC, etc. So that's how people see SADC, and the social movements in around the Southern African continent regard SADC as an elitist organization that doesn't really connect with the masses. There's been a lot of, I have attended some parallel events to ordinary or extraordinary meetings of the head of states, where I would be part of a group of people who would prepare position papers from the civil society, but we wouldn't get that consideration from comfort from SADC itself. Again, the fact that within SADC today, as the head of SADC today, the chair is Zimbabwe's President Mnangagwa. So no one regards Zimbabwe as a leader, as a leader of a democratic process. So there is a lot of challenges regarding SADC. I believe that SADC should have a better role, but countries like South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, that have shown to be in favor of democracy, have a more legitimacy to trying to help the Mozambicans, and can be heard by the different parties in this conflict, in this context, which is also the opposition and the wider civil society in Mozambique. So now, domestically, the problem is that most of the institutions in Mozambique have been co-opted by the ruling party, by the regime. I'm not saying all the institutions, but most of them. If you look at even historical individuals like Joaquim Chissano, Graça Machel, and so on, they have lost their legitimacy to be the bridge between the society and the regime, because they are regarded as part of the problem. And so this is a problem. The courts are not legitimate, they're not seen as legitimate. The public institution, the government institution, cannot be part of a negotiation between the people and the regime. I would say that the Catholic Church has been playing an important role, not only in the context of the armed conflict and the peace agreement of 1992, but also post that. The Catholic Church, the bishops have been publishing a lot of, I would say, recommendations, position paper touching on corruption, touching on maladministration, touching on substantial societal challenges. But unfortunately, they have never been heard by those who would, those who should take those recommendations into consideration. But I think they nevertheless can be brought in as legitimate parties to facilitate dialogue and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Fredson, and thank you for such clarity. I like how philosophical you are, and especially understanding the nature of the state and the developmental aspect of it and the shortcomings. And it's very sad actually to learn that Mozambique has got icons who could be useful to be a voice of reason on the continent. We have former President Chisano, and we also have former First Lady. Yes, that's the expectation. And you know, within the African Union, there is that panel of the wise and elders forum and so forth, where former statesmen and also influential persons could play a key role. And we do not see it in this. It's not visible. Perhaps there's diplomacy underway, but at least they should be doing something that is seen to be making efforts towards nation building agenda, and also to speak out in critical times like these, where there's loss of life, where there's injuries inflicted to citizens, where the country's economic activities are halted because of things that could be resolved through dialogue and other constructive means. Mandisi, please come through and share your insights.
Thank you very much, Tendai. And once more, thanks to SALO for the invitation. I'd like to perhaps start with on the issue that Fredson was speaking to just now, and perhaps to say that he shouldn't feel that he's getting into the lion's cage by raising the issue of an entrenched violent culture in Mozambique. And I want to come at this from the point of view that the way I understand the argument that Fredson is raising, is a perspective that I also gained when I attended a civil society forum. I think it must have been 2014 or thereabouts in Maputo, which was convened by the Lawyers Without Borders. And I think for the first time, I actually understood, that Mozambique, for the longest period of time, has actually been having these episodes, of violent contestation, which, of course, there was the, colonial violence against the people. But the reference point at that time was that since 1964, when Frelimo actually launched its armed campaign, Mozambique had actually been in these periodic phases of violent contestation. Because there was a brief lull, when independence was attained, but then you had, the Renamo War, which started after that brief period of lull and lasted for 16 years until the peace agreement was reached in 1992. Again, you had a bit of a brief lull, but then suddenly, out of the blue, we heard that Mr. Dhlakama had actually gone back to Gorongosa. And that started another phase, of violent contestation between the state and players that were outside of the state. So this is an issue that probably speaks to something that was also raised in this forum that I attended, that peace agreements tend to be between those who are armed rather than, peace agreements that involve broader society. And also address, the impact, of violence committed by either side on societies, on women, on children, on communities, and so on. So I think that is the perspective that I understood Fredson to be arguing from. And therefore, Bishop Ernesto, I think that this is an important point that needs to be taken into account, that when, Mozambique needs something, maybe I cannot define it right now, a much broader and deeper conversation that would once and for all, address, the issue about the endemic and entrenched violent culture of contestation that is there in Mozambique. That is the first point that I would like to raise. The second point that I would like to raise is a point that the bishop actually spoke to, which is the endemic problem in the Mozambique electoral system. And I think he articulated very well where the problems actually arise, which is just the voting does take place, but what happens thereafter, I think the source of the problems, in Mozambican elections, comes from the stage when the voting stations are closed for actual voting and the counting processes start. There have been instances where, party agents of, other parties are not allowed to participate in the processes, but also the big issue of the difference between the results that are collated in the voting station and the announced results. That also is a part of the endemic problem and the source, of problems that leads to this never-ending contestation around election results. And I'm reminded here of the previous local government elections, where we went to sleep, knowing that Renamo had actually won Madola, I think by about 51%. And then something happened overnight, which I understand included the deployment of some intelligence agents. And the following morning, the results were actually reversed to 51-49 in favor of Frelimo. So those are the issues around, which a lot of contestation in Mozambican elections actually happen. And I think that it's an issue that speaks to the electoral body itself. And so I want to come to the issue of the Constitutional Council. For me, the fact that, they've asked for more time, I think they've requested another 20 days and so on, and they've already posed some questions to the electoral body. It probably speaks to the extent, and in the last conversation we had, I spoke about the fact that sometimes the irregularities are so blatant that it is impossible for the Constitutional Council to avoid them. And there have been instances in the past where they call for a rerun, I think in about 8 localities, because of the extent of the irregularities. So the fact that they've asked for more time this time around maybe speaks to, what they are looking at by way of what has been presented, as evidence of fraud and irregularity. So we have to see, what is going to happen when the period they've requested has actually ended. The last point perhaps that I need to raise is that there is, I think, a need, and this is something that comes from a point that I can't remember now whether it was Fredson who spoke to this issue, but there is a need for I don't know whether to say a conversation that will enable a reconfiguration of the state, because I think that the impression is that the state as currently exists, was created in the image, of the ruling party. And states should not be like that. States should be, creatures that are created for whole society, the whole of society. And I think that's a deeper conversation. Again, perhaps Bishop and the civil society actors, this is something they also need to. So that, it was the Bishop who actually raised this issue, the need for structural and transformative change in Mozambique. So those are the 3 points that I just wanted to speak to. Perhaps on the SADC summit, I would just say that it's a pity that we are having this conversation, ahead of the actual heads of state summit. In some ways, I do expect some measure of difference in the conversation that's going to take place among the heads of state, given the entrance of new players within SADC itself, because of changes that have happened in Botswana, in Mauritius, in Malawi, in Zambia, and so on. But we'll just, see what comes out of that summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I see Fredson has been very happy because you also touched and elaborated on some aspects that he has touched. I think that's quite a comprehensive submission. I think it speaks to what needs to happen in Mozambique. I do think that the nature of the state as it stands, the status quo cannot provide a clearer and a brighter future for Mozambicans unless fundamental aspects of the state, we have to revisit that, and to use your words, to reconfiguration. Certainly not only Mozambique, but also certain culprits of states within the African continent and our region, SADC. That we need that total reconfiguration of or at least partial, where we address core issues that can make a state functional again, that can restore confidence and that social contract between the citizens and the state. And there are some comments here which are very insightful. Sheila mentioned that I don't expect much from SADC meeting. The chair congratulated Daniel Chapo, Frelimo's candidate, even before the results were announced. I think this has been an issue in all medias. And when people are interrogating what to expect from this, but we stand guided. We might be shocked to see something different. Let's see what happens as this extraordinary summit unfolds. And there's a question from Mulalo to say, what must be done to end the protests in Mozambique? What are the expectations from the regional state actors trying to resolve the protests beyond Mozambique borders? I think from what we see and from what we are reading in the space, the Constitutional Council has become the last voice for the citizen. If they endorse this disputed outcome, it's going to be a perpetual state of violence and might actually escalate into a broader regional chaos. That's the anticipation from analysts. But if they tend to be very objective and then consider the gross irregularities that have been mentioned by several electoral stakeholders, and then perhaps ask for a rerun or some sort, that could see Mozambique maybe setting standards for an election to be held, for a free and fair election to be held, which I believe that is the most suitable approach in my view. And there's a comment here or question rather, from Kale, saying that, are there any inroads to security sector or elements within Frelimo? The heavy-handedness of police is disheartening. What are the prospects for a more participatory discussion by the public? Well, I mean, we have seen Frelimo. I mean, it's not, it's something that is also in research. Afrobarometer and other governance standards, they've highlighted that the police force in Mozambique is, the perception from citizens that it's politicized and it works against, it's being used as a state apparatus against the voices of the citizens. So I'd like to go back to our panelists to give their final shots, final remarks. I'll start with Ngandife, then I'll go to the Bishop, then I'll go to Sheila, then I'll go to Fred. So Ngandife, your final parting shots. Thank you so much for those insights, your final parting shots to the dialogue.
Okay. Thank you once again. I heard a lot of insightful ideas during the discuss, and some of those are not very really. We are here in the grassroots, here in the real sport. We live all what are happening in post-electoral Mozambique, and we see that these people, Mozambican people, are tolerant and patient, are very tolerant. But when we go back since 2023, any attempt to demonstrate that is not the Frelimo party or group from Frelimo has been brutally repressed, and people have been killed because of that. In this sense, people can no longer tolerate the lack of disrespect of human rights perpetrated by those who are supposed to protect citizens. Police, in this case, the state in general. In this brutality, no one escaped. Children, students, elderly, even those who still at home, they also suffer all of this. Now we are working on the situation of threatness and persecutor of student. It's one of the biggest of the one of the biggest university here in Mozambique. I think all of us saw that students demonstrated in their university residence. And after that, a group from the Frelimo visited their resident and start to persecute it and threaten with death because of the students are demonstrating. And this is not the Mozambique that we want for future. but the leader insists to keep this country in the situation that is in. And yeah, I think we must rethink and reset a lot of things, a lot of issues. We must reset the rule. Our social contract should be rethink. Yeah, because if we don't do that, in a few times, Mozambique won't be the same. So I think it was a very, very nice space to discuss and big opportunity to include other country to discuss and understand what is really happening here in Mozambique. And we have a holistic thought about all of this and help each others, because we are seeing that the international institution, United States and other are saying different things that most of time are not protecting and not supporting the people, but are supporting the part who are in the government right now. So I saw your sign, and I thank you. But my last input and my last request is to join more, and we must have holistic understand about all what are happening here and support Mozambique.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we are all gonna intensify our efforts, advocacy, and ensuring that the voices of the innocent Mozambicans are heard out there, and that Africa at large pays attention to the situation in Mozambique. And the Bishop, could you say your parting shots in brief?
No, thank you so much. Just a few words. The first one is to thank the organizers and also the colleagues on the platforms. We have learned a lot about in this conversation. I think we will be taking what we have heard to our conference of bishops and our forums. It's important to do that. The second one is also to say we as the church we made clear that we are on the side of the people. That is our role. But in terms of yes, we need to do more in terms of what is happening. We have issued our statements, and but we needed to move from just declarations to other level of engagement. But we have also deliberately decided to be with the people in the communities. Those who know us, we are always in the funerals. Sometimes at the funerals of one of, let us say, young people from one of the political parties. We go to in the afternoon to that is very painful as a pastor. But that is our role to unite people. But also we need to come together to say, let's stop the violence. In terms of the way forward, as the church and the part of the civil society and the citizen, I think in Mozambique now we stand between truth and hope. Before we do anything in terms of dialogue and embracing the future, we need to do something courageous, which is to face the truth. And the church is open to help. We have done it with the Renamos when we said, no, Renamos and the other movements needed to face the truth. And now we see that Renamo is a, let us a non-armed political actor in the country, and the church was participating in reintegrating everyone as a civilian. But now we need to come to, let's be clear and candid. We need to come with the ruling part. I think we need to speak the truth. The ruling part to say the power dynamics have changed in the region and in the country. The young people are taking lead, and we need to make changes in terms of moving from the culture of the monopoly of power to sharing the destiny of the country. We know that it is difficult, but we have to do that, to face the truth. For example, now we are waiting for the truth from the electoral authorities. From there, I think we need to go the other steps to say, we need to do it peaceful, we need to use the institution, and the church will be accompanying everyone to do that. So otherwise, we have to decide. I'm not just prophesying in terms of the revolution or other things, but the young people in the era of technology, the social media, and are different from our generations. So we need to make sure that we have a transition, not a revolution, but we need to also to, Sheila talked about the social contract. I would say we need to move it from just the social contract to come to the national covenant, if I can use a theological term, to say, it's not Mozambique, we need to move it from just a competition to start cooperating everyone. We need a covenant. Political parties, the Frelimo, Renamo, MDM, they need to come together, not just to compete, but to cooperate, to do something together that no one can do alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. You've given me a term to think about the entire day. National Covenant. I think those theological terms, they give us a deeper insight into how the problem could be resolved. Entirely a union of minds and hearts of the people of Mozambique to redefine the future and redefine leadership, governance, as well as nation building agenda. Let's hear from Sheila, just in brief.
Thank you for the opportunity to learn from different perspectives and also to share my view on the post-electoral situation in Mozambique. Just wanted to make like a little alert about this post-election. We need to analyze this post-election in a different way because it's not typical. What we see is that the struggle is not only political, but it started with an opposition leader, but even people that are not affiliated to political parties are also now in this. But of course, I could understand the perspectives of Fredson, Mandisi, and also the bishop, and we all are against violence. And essentially, what needs to be done was mentioned. The word of the people must be taken in account, and the institution in Mozambique need to be more impartial. The courts, the constitutional court need to address this issue in an impartial way, so that the truth can be there, and with this, I think the violence can stop. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well done, Sheila, for those remarks. It's always refreshing to hear from you and your enthusiasm as a human rights defender and activist, a journalist. Your insights, they will go a long way to shape the brighter future of Mozambique. And finally, to Fredson, to give us your parting shots.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I think, my previous colleagues, touched basically what I was going to talk about, the need for, a complete reconfiguration of social and political relations in Mozambique as a way of moving forward. And obviously, Mozambique needs the help of its neighbors that have got a much, a better experience with dealing with democratic transition and democracy as a process, including inclusion and so on and so on. Obviously, also considering the internal actors that could also play an important role. But again, I need to reiterate that the primary responsibility today relies within the regime. So I really am a very big fan of the words by Giuseppe di Lampedusa when he says, if we want things to stay as they are, things will have to change. So if we want Mozambique to continue as a country to be able to have a sort of a political and social stability that it's required, things have to dramatically change. And this is a very strong message that needs to be sent to the regime, to the center of the regime and to the elite in Mozambique, that the time to do things differently has arrived. So it has arrived and it has to be now. But I don't think that the message has been received that way, because the strategy for me seems to be that of winning by exhaustion. That, this process, these contestations have been going on for a month now, but not a meaningful decision has been made by the government. Only yesterday, the president spoke to the nation, but he didn't give anything in concrete. So I'm very skeptical about the role of the Constitutional Council, because as I tried to say, the Constitutional Council is one of the institutions in Mozambique that has no credit at all. So should we expect the truth to come from such an institution? It's a question that is very important. And whatever will come from that institution, will it be regarded as the truth? So there's a lot of questions that need to be posed, and unfortunately, we don't have much time. But once again, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Fredson. I'm mind blown. If you want things to change, if you want things to stay the same, things has to dramatically change. I think it's true. It's indeed true. If we want democracy to be strengthened, if we want peace, then it means that our attitudes and our efforts, they have to dramatically change all the time. Reading the signs of times and reading the needs of the people, stakeholders. It must be a collective effort that is always dynamic. It can't be a single approach like what we've seen with these liberation movements, an approach of cohesion and an approach that is contrary to why they were established. I think we've come to an end of our discussion, and I would like to invite Lily to behalf of SALO to give closing remarks and to also thank us and wish us a good week.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Tendai. Thank you for doing a wonderful job at chairing this important discussion. It is very much appreciated. And thank you so much to our speakers for making time to contribute to this discussion. I think we've all definitely learned a lot more about what's happening and about what needs to be done. And I think we can also all agree that this is the beginning. Well, this is a continuation of a conversation that needs to be ongoing, and we hope to have further discussions. So thank you everyone for attending, everyone who's participated in the discussion, and of course thank you very much to our developmental partners, the Norwegian People's Aid, for their support in making this dialogue happen. I wish you all a good week, and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.